My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 36 years old, a cybersecurity analyst in Austin, Texas. And 2 hours ago, I watched every cent I had vanish from my accounts in real time. One push notification after another exploded across my phone while I was finishing a late night report at the kitchen table. Blue light from my laptop reflecting off the empty cereal bowls in the sink. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floorboards settling. At first, I thought it was a glitch, some server error, a display bug that would correct itself if I just refreshed the page. Then I opened my banking app and saw the totals. Checking, savings, emergency fund, even the tiny college nest egg I'd started for my daughter years ago, all emptied, all transferred out through a device I recognized. It wasn't a hacker sitting in some dark basement overseas. It wasn't a sophisticated phishing attack or a zero-day exploit. It was my brother. The same brother I once saved from eviction. The same brother I'd trusted enough to leave on as an authorized user when he just needed a little help getting back on his feet. He hadn't just taken a loan. He had cleaned out my life. I stared at the screen, my heart beating so hard it felt like the sound was echoing off the walls. Rent gone, tuition gone, every sleepless overtime shift I'd worked, every freelance gig I'd taken after my daughter went to bed when I should have been resting. All of it. Gone with a few taps from someone who knew exactly how much I depended on that money. Someone who had sat at this very kitchen table and eaten meals I'd cooked. Someone who had held my daughter as a baby and promised he'd always look out for her. I didn't cry. I froze. My mind snapped straight to threat models and attack surfaces like I was auditing a stranger's breach instead of living my own. Had he guessed my password? Used an old token? Exploited some vulnerability I'd overlooked because I was too tired to think straight? I checked the device list and there it was. His cheap Android phone still linked because I'd never imagined he'd use it against me. My stomach turned. Was I the idiot for believing family was a safe exception to the rules I enforced for everyone else? The rules I lectured clients about? The rules I built entire security frameworks around? Trust no one. Verify everything. Assume breach. Behind me, a chair scraped against the tile floor. My 10-year-old daughter, Lily, patted in on socked feet, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. Her hair was a tangled mess from sleep, and she was wearing those unicorn pajamas she refused to give up, even though they were getting too small. She took one look at my face, then at the screen lit with red warnings and negative balances. For a second, she just stared like she was doing some kind of calculation. Only she understood. I watched her eyes move across the numbers, the alerts, the frozen expression on my face. Then she squared her shoulders with this tiny, fierce certainty that did not match her unicorn pajamas and said, "Mom, don't worry. I handled it." My brain short-circuited. What could a 10-year-old possibly have handled in the middle of a financial ambush like this? The second her words left her mouth, I felt my professional brain collide with my mom brain. In the SOC at work, when an intern says, "Don't worry, I fixed it," my first instinct is to ask what they just broke. At home, looking at my daughter's small, serious face, all I wanted to do was protect her from the mess her uncle had dumped on us. But there was something in her eyes, something that told me she wasn't just trying to make me feel better. "What do you mean you handled it?" I asked as calmly as I could manage, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. She climbed onto the chair beside me, swinging her legs like it was just another night, not the moment our lives had been financially decapitated. "You remember when you showed me the banking app?" she said. "You said if anything ever looked weird, I should click this little flag thing and tell you immediately." She reached for my phone with a confidence that should have belonged to someone twice her age. I watched her navigate the screen with ease, her small fingers moving with purpose. "I was on your phone earlier playing that puzzle game," she explained, "and I saw a text from the bank about a new login. It sounded sketchy, so I opened the app. The numbers were moving, Mom, like a video game. So I hit the emergency freeze button and I reported the device." My breath caught in my throat. In my panic, I hadn't even noticed the tiny banner at the top of the app. Temporary hold applied. Suspicious activity under review. For a moment, the room tilted. The fluorescent light above the sink seemed too bright. The hum of the refrigerator too loud. "You froze the accounts?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, she said, almost offended that I sounded surprised. I remembered what you said about bad guys online. You told me if something feels wrong, don't be polite. Hit the red button, so I did. On the transaction list, a final transfer sat in limbo, initiated but not yet cleared. My brother had almost gotten away with everything. Almost. My 10-year-old daughter had slammed the digital door on his fingers with seconds to spare. Relief crashed into shame. I was the expert, the one companies paid to secure entire infrastructures, the one who gave presentations about insider threats and access control. Yet it was my 10-year-old who reacted fast enough to limit the damage. How did you know the login was his? I asked, still trying to piece together how she'd figured it out so quickly. She pulled her own tablet out from under her hoodie like she'd been waiting for the question. Because of Find My, she said matter-of-factly. You made me share my location with you, remember? You also shared yours and Uncle's with me when we went to the amusement park last summer. You never turned his off. She tapped the screen a few times and showed me the map. When the bank message popped up, I checked the map, and his dot was blinking from some motel outside Houston. You weren't there. She shrugged like basic geolocation sleuthing was just homework. I figured someone was doing something bad. That's when my anger snapped from wild and directionless into a sharp, bright line. My brother hadn't just violated my trust. He'd done it knowing I had a child depending on me. He'd used access I'd given him years ago when I was drowning in debt, and he'd fronted me money for a security deposit. Back then, adding him as an authorized user on one card felt like gratitude, a way of saying thank you. I never removed him when I got stable. I told myself it was proof that family paid each other back, that we looked out for each other. Now that decision had turned into a loaded gun I'd handed him myself. Lily drew her knees up on the chair and wrapped her arms around them. Are we going to be okay? She whispered, her voice smaller now. I don't care about stuff, Mom. Are we going to have to move? The question sliced deeper than any drained balance. Deeper than the betrayal, deeper than the anger. My daughter was worried about losing her home, her school, her friends, everything she knew because of something her uncle had done. We are going to be okay, I said, forcing each word to sound like a promise and not a wish. He tried to take everything, but he underestimated you, and he definitely underestimated me. I pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body relax against mine. Over her shoulder, I stared at the screen still glowing with evidence of betrayal. My mind was already shifting into investigation mode. People online always talk about cutting off toxic family, but what does that actually look like when your toxic family member has your routing numbers and social security? When the betrayal comes from inside the house, I did the boring life-saving stuff first, the unsexy work that nobody talks about in movies. I called the bank fraud department and spent 45 minutes on hold listening to terrible jazz music. I changed passwords on everything: banking, email, social media, cloud storage. I enabled two-factor authentication on every account that offered it. I removed all authorized users and devices from my financial accounts. I froze my credit at all three bureaus. I started an evidence folder and began dragging in screenshots, logs, timestamps, and device fingerprints. I documented everything, every notification, every balance, every device ID. Because when someone steals from you, documentation isn't optional, it's survival. 2 days later, just as I was starting to believe we might survive this with only bruises instead of fractures, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I was in the middle of a video meeting with my friend and coworker, Megan Clark, walking her through the logs I'd pulled from the bank portal. We'd already confirmed the device fingerprint matched the dusty Android my brother refused to upgrade, and we'd drafted an incident report in case I needed to push the bank harder. Lily sat at the far end of the table with her sketchbook, drawing little comic panels of Supermom and Security Girl kicking a cartoon villain out of a bank vault. The number called again, insistent. Texas area code, but not one I recognized. I muted my mic. Hang on, Meg. Let me grab this. The moment I answered, my eardrum was assaulted. What the hell did you do, Sarah? It was him, my brother Jake. No hello, no apology. just raw, panicked rage. For half a second, hearing his voice triggered muscle memory. Two teenagers in a cramped apartment, sharing instant noodles and promising we'd always have each other's backs. Then the present slammed back. He'd tried to rob his niece blind. "Good evening to you, too," I said, my voice icier than I felt. "How's life outside Houston?" He swore again, breathing like he'd been running. "Don't play games. You froze the accounts. The bank is asking questions. Their fraud department called me. They're talking about law enforcement. You had no right. No right to stop you from draining my daughter's future?" I cut in. Lily's head snapped up at the word daughter. I mouthed, "It's okay," and pointed toward her room. She hesitated, then disappeared with her tablet, closing the door softly behind her. "You used access I gave you years ago when I was stupid enough to think family meant something," I continued, keeping my voice low and steady. "You thought you could empty everything and disappear into some motel with your girlfriend? And you're mad because I caught you?" He laughed. This high, ugly laugh I'd never heard before. "Caught me? You think this is over a few transfers? You have no idea what you just stepped into. You flag those transactions, you freeze those accounts, you mess things up for people who don't like their money messed with. You didn't just screw me, you screwed them. Do you have any idea what they do to people who delay payouts?" A chill threaded down my spine. "Who is they?" "Doesn't matter," he snapped. "All you need to know is you unfreeze the accounts. You tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. Or they'll come for you too. You and that little girl you're so proud of." The threat landed with cold, precise weight. Old me, the big sister who used to bail him out and lie to mom for him, might have caved. But the version of me who'd cleaned up after ransomware crews and traced extortion emails back to cheap offshore bulletproof hosts knew bluff when she heard it. "You think I'm scared of criminals?" I asked softly. "I spend my nights tearing apart malware those geniuses can barely spell. The difference is they never shared my mom's kitchen. You did. And that makes what you did worse, not better." He cursed again, but this time it sounded less like rage and more like fear. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You just signed your own eviction notice." He hung up. My hand shook, but not from panic this time, from clarity. That's when I realized this wasn't a family argument anymore. This was fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. I looped in Megan properly, and then she connected me with Detective Laura King from the state's Financial Crimes Task Force. Their first instruction was clear: preserve everything, don't confront him directly, let him talk. Detective King said over a choppy video call, "Document everything, screenshots, call logs, emails, don't respond to any threats. And Sarah, this isn't your fault. We see this pattern all the time. Fraud that starts as borrowing from people they know. Then the next message arrived. A throwaway email address I didn't recognize. Subject line, you should stop digging. No greeting, no signature, just a single sentence in the body. Family business is best handled in-house, unless you want everyone's secrets spilled." Underneath was a link. Megan's voice echoed in my mind. Rule 1. Never click unsolicited links, especially from someone trying to scare you. I hovered over it instead, inspecting the URL. It led to a public forum I knew well, a hangout for people swapping get-rich-quick tricks that were really just barely sanitized scams. Against my better judgment, I opened it in a sandbox environment. A thread at the top had my first name in the title. Inside were screenshots of my LinkedIn profile, my company's website, a cropped photo of me and Lily at a coding fair last year. The user who'd posted them had a handle I recognized from old stories my brother used to brag about, a guy called Troy Real. The partner he'd always insisted was just good with people. My stomach dropped. In the comments, users joked about leveraging me to unlock frozen funds, speculated about how much pressure it would take before the sister caves. And one especially charming soul suggested sending a little scare her kids' way. My fingers went numb. Behind me, the floor creaked. I snapped the laptop closed, but not before Lily appeared in the doorway, hair a sleepy halo. "You're still working?" she murmured. "It's late." I forced a smile. "Just finishing up, bug. Go back to bed. Big day tomorrow." "Are we still going to the art fundraiser meeting?" she asked, brightening slightly. The idea had been hers. If we couldn't get the money back quickly, maybe the community could help. She wanted to organize a digital art sale with her classmates, proceeds going toward our emergency fund. I'd said yes, partly because it made her feel powerful, partly because the thought of accepting help from anyone who wasn't related to me was strangely comforting. Yeah, I said. We are. And we're going to talk to some grown-ups who know how to deal with bad guys, too. At the community center parking lot after Lily's art fundraiser meeting, a man stepped away from the shade of a live oak tree near the edge of the lot. My body tensed immediately, years of threat assessment kicking in. But then I recognized the face from grainy photos my brother had once shown me on an old phone. Mark Dawson, former friend, sometime accomplice, the guy who had supposedly gotten out of their schemes by going straight with a warehouse job. Sarah, he called quietly, hands raised slightly like he wanted to show he was unarmed. Don't freak out. I texted you earlier. I didn't think you'd answer, so I came here instead. Every instinct screamed at me to grab Lily and run. Instead, I put an arm around her shoulders and said, Go sit in the car, Bug. Lock the doors. I'll be right there. She obeyed without argument, eyes flicking from Mark to me, reading my posture like a threat meter. When she shut the door, I turned on him. You have exactly 30 seconds to explain why you're stalking my kid's fundraiser. He winced. Up close, he looked older than I remembered from those photos. Deeper lines around his eyes, shoulders that had lost some of their swagger. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. If anything, I'm here because I think they might. And I'm trying to stop that before it gets that far. They, I repeated. You mean my brother and his charming business partner? He glanced around nervously, lowering his voice. You really want to say their names out loud when you know they hang out on those forums, watch your socials, know your routines? That caught me off guard. You've seen the threads, I said. I used to post in some of them, he admitted, looking down at his shoes. Back when I thought it was harmless. Chargeback tricks, fake refunds, stuff nobody gets really hurt by. But then they escalated. Crypto exit scams, romance cons, the whole package. Your brother and his girlfriend, Haley, they're in deep with a crew that doesn't care who gets hurt as long as the wallet's fatten. He swallowed hard before continuing. When you froze those accounts, you cut off more than his little payday. You jammed up a pipeline they were counting on? They're blaming you. They're scared. And scared people do stupid things. For a second, the parking lot sounds faded. The hum of traffic, the squeak of a shopping cart nearby, and all I heard was my brother's earlier hiss in my ear. You didn't just screw me, you screwed them. I crossed my arms. Why tell me this? Why now? His gaze flicked toward the car where Lily sat watching us through the window. Because there's a kid involved, he said simply. And because I've got a kid on the way. My girlfriend is 3 months pregnant. I told myself I was out of that life, but the truth is I've still been in group chats, still seeing things I don't want my son to grow up around. He gestured between us. This feels like my last shot at doing something decent before I lose the right to call myself a father. I studied him carefully, weighing the risk against the potential reward. If Detective King was going to build a case, an insider could be gold, or he could be bait. You're willing to talk to law enforcement? I asked on record. He flinched, then nodded slowly. If that's what it takes. I'm not doing it for him, he added quickly. He made his choices. I'm doing it so you don't have to pay for them. That night, we set up a virtual meeting. Me at my kitchen table. Megan on her dual monitors. Detective King in a small office with file boxes stacked behind her. And Mark sitting in his dim living room, the glow of his TV casting flickers on the wall. He laid everything out. The Telegram channels, the Discord servers, the way my brother bragged about using his cybersecurity sister as a silent endorsement for investment marks. He described drop accounts, mule chains, burner phones. I watched Detective King's expression shift from neutral to focused predator. We can work with this, she said when he finished. If you're willing to wear a wire or capture some of these conversations under our direction, we can not only protect Sarah, we can dismantle more than one little hustle. Mark looked exhausted but strangely lighter. Tell me where to be and he said. Then Detective King turned to me. Sarah, we need him to incriminate himself. Are you willing to make contact? I looked toward Lily's closed door where a sliver of light peeked under the frame. Ready? No. But we'd already crossed the line where this could be handled with a guilty apology and a repayment plan. Put me in touch with whoever you trust, I said. Under Detective King's direction, I made a call the next morning. I used the one thing my brother always believed about me, that I was soft, that I'd cave if he scared me enough. I injected a tremor into my voice, one I didn't entirely have to fake. You were right, I said when he answered. This is bigger than I thought. Whoever they are, sent me messages. They know where I work. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about her. I let my voice catch on the last word. I can't let anything happen to my daughter. I could almost hear his greed warring with paranoia on the other end of the line. I talked to the bank, I continued. There might be a way to fix this. If you meet me, sign some forms. We can say it was a misunderstanding. Husband and wife account, clerical error, whatever. They like tidy stories. Meet where? He asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Town Lake, I said. The public trail near the big sculpture. Lots of people. Broad daylight. I'm not going anywhere sketchy. Detective King had insisted. Visible, crowded, cameras everywhere. Less risk to me, more data for them. Fine, he muttered after a long pause. Tomorrow, noon. And Sarah, don't try anything stupid. You're not the only one who can make phone calls. The next day was one of those deceptively beautiful Texas afternoons. Sunlight glittering on the water like scattered diamonds. Joggers and families and cyclists turning the trail into a moving tapestry of normal life. Under my sweatshirt, a tiny transmitter sat warm against my skin, its wire taped carefully along my ribs. Lily was nowhere near the park. Megan had taken her to a co-working space under the guise of a Bring Your Kid to Code Day, armed with pizza, educational videos, and strict instructions to keep her away from any live feeds Detective King might be monitoring. I still felt her absence like a missing limb. Mark sat on a bench half a block away, pretending to scroll his phone, an earpiece hidden under his baseball cap. He was our early warning system. If my brother showed up with muscle, Mark's job was to tell Detective King's team before I saw them. He's here, came the detective's murmur in my ear just as my brother's silhouette separated itself from the crowd. Hands jammed into the pockets of a hoodie, eyes darting more than I remembered. He'd lost weight. Or maybe he just looked smaller now that I'd stopped mentally inflating him into the fearless kid who used to stand between me and school bullies when we were growing up. You look like crap, he said by way of hello, stopping a few feet away. Stress doesn't suit you. Stealing from family doesn't suit you either, I replied, because even wired up and flanked by unseen officers, I couldn't help myself. He rolled his eyes. Are we doing this or not? I held up a folder thick with papers. Detective King had helped me prepare. Forms, fake bank letters, enough bureaucratic weight to make the scene look legitimate if anyone was watching. We are, I said, but I need to hear you say something first. Why did you do it? He snorted in disbelief. Seriously? You want a therapy session in the middle of the park? Humor me, I pressed. If I'm going to commit fraud for you, I at least want the courtesy of honesty. He glanced around nervously, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. Because I was tired of scraping by, he hissed. Because you got out, got your fancy tech job and your nice apartment, and your perfect little girl, and I got left with temp work and debts. Because for once, the universe handed me a shortcut. You left the door open, Sarah. I just walked through it. By wiping out your niece's savings? I said, keeping my voice steady. That shortcut? His jaw tightened visibly. I told you I was going to pay it back. With what? I asked. The profits from the scams you and Haley are running using my name? His eyes flashed with sudden anger. You've been talking to people, he said slowly. You think they're your friends? These cops and nerds you work with? You think they're going to keep you safe when the people behind me decide you're more trouble than you're worth? That's the thing, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. You talk about them like they're some unstoppable force, but I've seen their code. I've read their posts. They're just cowards hiding behind screens, and you? You're just a man who stole from a child and got caught. He opened his mouth, words gathering like a storm. And that's when a voice from behind him cut in, sharp and shaking. He's right. You are a coward. We both turned. Haley Brooks stood a few feet away, eyeliner smudged, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. I hadn't seen her in person since a blurry holiday dinner years ago. Now she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. What are you doing here? My brother snarled. You were supposed to stay at the motel. And miss the show? She shot back. Please. I wanted to see if you'd actually lie to her face about paying her back. You told me this was just redistributing from a sister who wouldn't miss it. You never said there was a kid. Guilt flickered across his face, then hardened. You were happy enough to spend the deposits, he said. Don't grow a conscience now. She looked at me, and in that one glance I saw fear, anger, and the brittle edge of someone who'd realized too late she'd picked the losing side. They're watching you, she said. The guys in the group, they think if they squeeze you hard enough, you'll get her to crack. But they're not the only ones watching. Somewhere behind us, a car door slammed. My brother flinched. Shut up, he hissed. You want all of us in cuffs? Maybe that's better than spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, she snapped. I'm done being your shield. He reached for her arm, fingers digging in, and that was enough. We've heard what we need, Detective King said in my ear, calm as a metronome. Step back, Sarah. I took one step away. 2. Then everything happened at once. Plainclothes officers converging from 3 directions, badges flashing in the sunlight, voices barking commands. My brother spinning, trying to bolt. Mark standing up from his bench, hands visible. Haley freezing like a deer in headlights. Detective King herself stepped in, reciting rights in a tone that suggested she'd done this 100 times and never stopped seeing the human cost. My brother's eyes met mine as they cuffed him. For a moment, the fury drained out, leaving something hollow and almost unrecognizable. You did this, he said, almost wonderingly. To your own family. No, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. I just stopped you from doing worse. He screamed then. Not words, just raw frustration. The sound echoed off the water as they led him away. Later, Lily would watch the news clip and ask why he yelled like that. I'd tell her the truth, that sometimes when people finally meet consequences they never expected to face, it's not remorse that erupts first. It's disbelief that the rules actually applied to them after all. After that, life didn't magically snap back into place. There were depositions, court dates, paperwork stacks taller than Lily. Long evenings where I sat at the dining table filling out victim statements while she did math homework on the other end. Detective King's team peeled back layers of the scam like the world's ugliest onion. Not just my drained accounts, but dozens of others. Lonely retirees who thought they'd found love. Single parents desperate for extra income. Even a nonprofit that thought they were investing surplus funds for high-yield returns. The more we learned, the harder it became to remember the kid who'd once split his last slice of pizza with me. At the preliminary hearing, I sat behind the bar with Megan on one side and Mark and his pregnant girlfriend on the other. Haley testified too, voice shaking but steady, describing late-night meetings and instructions barked through encrypted apps by men who never used their real names. My brother avoided my gaze the entire time. When the prosecutor laid out how he'd used my credentials as a trust anchor to lure victims, something inside me finally snapped the rest of the way. Any lingering fantasy about the brother I used to know dissolved. This was who he had chosen to be. Months later, he took a plea deal. 15 years with restitution obligations that would likely follow him long after parole. No dramatic last-minute apology. No teary confession. Just a signed agreement and averted eyes. The bank, under pressure from both regulators and bad press, quietly agreed to cover a significant portion of my losses, citing internal access control failures. It didn't erase the sleepless nights, but it meant Lily and I wouldn't be packing our lives into boxes and moving into some basement apartment. A chunk of the seized funds was allocated to victims, including us. When the letter came, Lily watched me open it, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. Is it over? She asked. Over turned out to be the wrong word. We're safer, I said. That's a better word. Safety became our new baseline project. I sat Lily down and walked her through credit freezes, two-factor authentication, why we don't reuse passwords even for boring sites. She showed me the notebook where she'd logged all the apps my brother had ever touched on my phone, tiny red skulls next to the ones that gave her a bad feeling. Together, we made a poster for her school's tech fair, How to Protect Your Future, even from family. The title raised a few eyebrows among the teachers until I volunteered to give a short workshop for parents on digital hygiene and financial boundaries. Standing in front of that room, explaining to other tired, overworked adults why helping a relative by sharing logins or letting them fix your computer could be more dangerous than any stranger on the dark web, I felt something shift. For years, I'd drawn a hard line between my work in cybersecurity and my personal life, as if the rules didn't apply at home because love somehow encrypted everything. Now I knew better. Love without boundaries isn't security, it's exposure. One evening, months after the sentencing, I found Lily at the kitchen table working on a new comic. It showed our squad lined up in superhero poses, me with a laptop shield, Megan firing code like confetti, Detective King wielding a giant badge, Mark holding a baby in one arm and tearing up a fake credit card with the other. Off to the side, behind bars made of ones and zeros, a small figure sat with his head in his hands. She'd drawn a caption bubble above him. I thought shortcuts would set me free. Underneath, in block letters, but real freedom isn't built on someone else's ruin. Do you think he'll ever say sorry? She asked without looking up from her drawing. I considered lying to make her feel better. Maybe someday, I said instead. But we can't live our lives waiting for that. The real apology is what we do with what happened, the walls we build, the people we help so they don't end up where we did. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and added one last speech bubble next to the drawn version of herself. Boundaries aren't mean, they're safety rails. Later that night, alone with my thoughts, I scrolled back through old photos on my phone. Two kids in thrift store clothes, leaning against each other and laughing like the world couldn't touch them. A young man holding newborn Lily with terrified pride in his eyes. A blurry Thanksgiving where he'd washed dishes without being asked and made everyone laugh with his terrible jokes. I didn't delete them. Pretending those moments never existed wouldn't make the last year any less real. Instead, I created a new album and named it Before. The rest of my camera roll, the court selfies, the fundraiser photos, the tech poster, Lily's comics, became After. The line between them wasn't clean, but it was honest. Family, I'd learned, isn't a magic shield against harm. Sometimes it's the source. The trick is learning when loyalty is love and when it's just fear dressed up as obligation. When someone uses your trust as their favorite exploit, you have every right to patch the vulnerability, even if it means cutting them off from the system entirely. So now I'll ask you what I ask myself on the nights when the house is quiet and the notifications have finally stopped. When blood betrays you, what's the real lesson? Endless forgiveness, no matter the cost? Or the courage to say, this is where my story changes, even if yours doesn't. And if you've ever had to build a new life on the rubble of a family betrayal, what boundary do you wish you'd drawn sooner?